I first moved to England in 2004, and like any good tourist, I went straight to the sewers and then to some of the landfill sites and all the big, amazing things that you imagine you should go and see when you first get to England. And I kind of got addicted to this sickly sweet smell, which is methane release from domestic waste. But I guess it started to really annoy me because it was such a big problem. I then went to the British Library and discovered that in that year that I arrived, 100 million tons of waste went to landfill. And 100 million tons is a problem, in my mind, kind of like climate change. It's inconceivable. How do we tackle this amount? How does one person sort of dive in and decide that you're going to fix this issue? Because 100 million tons, I couldn't even imagine what that looked like. I also found it really bizarre to imagine where 100 million tons was going, because the UK is this tiny island, and it doesn't really have a way in which to bury anything. But instead of sort of giving up on my waste dream, I just kept going back to the landfill sites and looking at the patterns and the materials coming in. It's totally illegal to take things away from a landfill site in the UK. In some countries, it's fair game, but in the UK, you're not allowed to just sort of go and cherry pick the good stuff. But what I did notice was that there was trucks and trucks and trucks that would drive up and have a single kind of material. And the first one that really annoyed me was these 4 trucks came in a row, and they had closed cell black foam in them. This is the kind of black foam that you would pack a high-end camera and lenses in. And because it's light, this company was getting away, in my mind, with murder, because you pay for landfill by the ton. So these 4 big lorries filled with foam were virtually free to put into the ground. And then I saw what this is. I saw this beautiful material, which is a fire hose. And I thought, that's interesting. Why is that here? And I had a chance meeting with the London Fire Brigade, which really changed the course of my life. That was in 2005. I met a really lovely man who said, well, why don't you come to Croydon? Because that's where all of our fire hoses go to die. Croydon is this area in London, and I went to see it, and it was just like this, these rich, lustrous coils of red hose stacked up on a roof, and I fell in love with them because they were beautiful, because they were this life-saving, heroic material, and they were about to go to landfill. And I had run there because I was training for the London Marathon, so I picked one up, and I attempted to run home. They're 18 kilos each, so I didn't make it. I had to walk eventually, so I get home to Brixton, and I put it on the floor, and I said to Elvis, this is what we're going to do. And he said, what do you mean, we? I have a job. And I thought, I'm going to rescue the hose. I actually thought I was going to do it as a community service project, and that I would make a couple of phone calls, and I would find some industrial reuse for fire hose. But there isn't one. I actually wanted to make roof tiles, but we tested fire hose. We did some R&D. It's not fireproof if it's not a hose and there's not water running through it. And it's also not waterproof if you leave it outside for about 10 years. It cracks with UV. So if I'd made roofing tiles, they would have been leaky, flammable roofs. So it would have been a very sort of short-lived business. And what we ended up making was really, believe it or not, luxury handbags. If you went back to anyone who knew me before 2004 and asked what I would least likely become, it would be a luxury handbag designer. I am not fashionable. I am not trendy. And the only reason that we're doing this is because we did an incredible amount of research and discovered that there is a very famous luxury company that uses a very similar material in one of their key products. And actually, this is just a more expensive version of that material, right? So I thought I can compete with a dead French luggage manufacturer, no problem. I didn't know that business was, I think, 30 billion turnover in that year. But we thought we're going to go and make bags. And we're not just going to make any bags. We're going to make the best bags in the world. Because we're going to rescue the material. We're going to transform it into absolutely beautiful things that are filled with cherished, lovely, life-saving materials and all the craftsmanship we can embed in them. And then we're going to give 50% of the profits to the firefighters' charity. And that was a snap decision that I made on the first day that I met the fire brigade. I said, look, I'm going to take your hoses, but I'm going to give you half of the money back. And they thought this was really funny and that they would never see me again. But we are, and actually today, I'm really proud of Elvis today because for the last over a decade now, we've become the longest standing corporate giver. Corporate, that's funny because it's talking about us, to the firefighters charity. And today he won a Spirit of Fire Awards from the firefighters charity. So I'm really, really pleased about that today. And a lot of people ask us over the time, 50%, whoa, that's a lot. Especially proto-investors, they come to us and they're like, 50%. Can we kind of bring that down a little bit? And then we talk about the value of sharing. You know, you're in kindergarten and you learn to share. Small children are always taught to share. And then we spend the rest of our lives becoming really, really selfish. And I just don't fundamentally buy that or understand that. So we do some other funny things around giving, like we write our checks to our charity partners on the same day that we give our taxes to the government. And we have a tax party. And we ignore what the government actually does with the money that we give them, and we just pretend that we've paid for cancer treatments and children's education and trains and all these wonderful things. And it is a party, it's a celebration. But it just feels so good to give money away. You know, I think a lot of people, when they struggle to sleep at night, they might have some hot milk or some malted milk powder or go for a walk, have a hot bath, things like that. I haven't struggled to sleep in a decade, right? This is actually something that makes you feel really, really, really incredibly good. And when you do good things happen to you. So, you know, this is I think you can all agree the highlight of this image is a red belt, right? We had this lady call us, this was in 2008, I think. This lady kept calling me going, you know, I need a belt for this photo shoot. I need a belt for this photo shoot. And I said, look, we don't do free stuff. It's just not, you know, we're too small. She's like, but I work for Vogue. And I was like, oh, fine. So we sent a belt to America. And then 6 months later, heard absolutely nothing back. And I thought, yeah, that Vogue lady scammed me. And then we got sent this image. We got sent a Vogue magazine. It was the first Vogue magazine I'd ever owned or read. And we were in it. We were in this Mario Testino shoot, and that's Cameron Diaz. And, you know, basically that turned us from being a quirky British fire hose, you know, collecting couple into, you know, someone who the fashion world was taking seriously. This led to commissions from Apple. This led to us getting into Harrods. This led to all kinds of crazy things. So we thought, yeah, this is great. And actually what it led to in 2010, which was the most exciting year for us in many, many ways, was that by 2010, we were solving the British fire hose problem. So that thing that we'd set out to solve, we were doing it. You know, we have to keep doing it every year, but since 2005, no London hose has gone to landfill, which is, you know, for me, a big, big victory. But when you're a waste kind of junkie, you can't stop with one. You keep bringing another one and another one. And what really drives Elvis crazy now is that they just come to me. I don't even have to go to the landfill site anymore. I receive every week these big packages from, you know, Vietnam or, you know, other companies, and they just send me their crap, basically. And I'm not allowed to open any of these packages until about 4 p.m. on a Friday, because he knows if I open it on a Tuesday, that's it. The week is gone, because I'll just get into it like a magpie. But one waste that people kept sending us, this is still around the 2010 mark, people kept sending us again and again and again, car manufacturers, luxury businesses, were big sacks of leather offcuts. And I started to dip into the problem and try and understand it. A low estimate of where we are with leather waste is that, you know, a leather hide is like shaped kind of like that, and you cut out the pieces that you want, and the rest of it is scrapped. It's also scrapped because of mosquito bites and stretch marks, things like that. But it's scrapped to the tune of about 800,000 tons a year, and this is freshly tanned, clean, new material. It's slightly obscene, and 800,000 tons is a low estimate. So this is a design brief that I gave Elvis, which is very typical. I don't kind of, I'm the least talented person in our business. I don't know how to sew. I don't know how to make anything. But I know how to write really sort of provocative words on the back of a napkin. And this is what I gave to Elvis. Obviously, you know, it's not enough to save all the fire hose or to save all the leather. We want to deliver the circular economy as well. So I put, you know, has to be circular, has to be designed to be taken apart. It was right at the sort of, people were starting to talk about the sharing economy, and I was like, ooh, what if people could swap and share this leather? So I put that in there. DIY, we were in the process of fixing up a 200-year-old building, so I put that in there. And I thought, what's he going to come up with to save all of this leather? You know, what's going to happen? And actually, he came up with 3 shapes that you can interlock to basically create whole new hides. And this is one of our first items. 2 dimensions is always easy to start in. That's a rug. If you don't want the rug anymore, though, you can take it apart and make a cube, which isn't in itself very interesting. But it allows you to think that, yes, we can jump to 3 dimensions. And if you don't like the cube anymore, you can reupholster your chair. Elvis built this chair. It's made of, the wood is reclaimed scaffolding wood. And if you don't like the chair anymore, you can take it apart and make a bag. So we've decided that because leather, once it's tanned, this stuff is not biodegrading for an awfully, awfully, awfully long time. We might as well make the best use of the material as it is and as it stands. And we also have to give 50% of the profits from that to charity. This is the building we were DIYing at the time. It had no heat, no power, even though it's clearly a mill, and for the first 150 years of its life, it was powered by water running through it. We were inspired by that building to think, actually, if we're going to deliver the circular economy, 50% of the profits from this leather project are going to have to go to renewable energy projects. And a lot of people kind of question that, because obviously there's a very specific link between fire hose and firemen. I think there's quite a specific link between cows and climate change. And if we're giving the money away, that was the other thing. I was like, just don't argue with me. It's going to renewable energy because that's what we want to fix next. So that's where 50% of the profits go from the leather project. And then I suppose we come to values. This is a B Corp event. I suppose we're a B Corp before there were B Corps. And that's why when the movement arrived in the UK, we were very proud to join. We're a social enterprise, we're a B Corp. When you decide to become a B Corp, you have to enshrine these values in your constitution. That was not difficult for us to do. I said to Elvis, we're going to enshrine these values in our constitution. He's like, yeah, that's fine. So that was a very easy decision for us to make. But I also wanted to talk about some of the other values that are behind the business. I think money is like WD-40. It's not really interesting in and of itself. Its only real purpose is to kind of keep things moving, grease the wheels, that kind of thing. And so the only time I ever really get excited about money is this one equation here. A ton of leather waste in the ground costs about 410 pounds. But if we turn it into our Lego-like system, it can generate 100,000 pounds of value. That same 1,000 kilograms. So what are we doing? And actually, it was that equation that I think really inspired Burberry a couple of years to approach us and say, we have a leather problem, can you help us with our leather problem? So late last year, we formed a partnership with the Burberry Foundation. It's a 5-year partnership to scale our leather system and really try to go for a much bigger impact. I'm also hoping that everyone eats less meat, because let's face it, if people eat less meat, then 800,000 tons will come down, and I would much rather solve a smaller problem than a bigger problem. Multiple positive objectives. I think we don't have time for businesses to have single objectives anymore. The ice caps are melting, right? We have to all put our foot down and get involved and pick up a shovel. And you have to think, well, yes, I can solve the fire hose problem. I can create apprenticeships. We've tried doing lots and lots of good things that have massively failed. We hired people, we did this one experiment one year where we hired people directly out of rehab because we thought, hey, we can solve that problem as well. We couldn't. It was a complete and utter disaster. So you do sometimes have to pick your battles, but having multiple objectives really focuses the mind, because it means that I never feel like I'm not allowed to have a view on something or a say in something or an impact on an issue. As long as our house is in order, we can get involved. And a prime example of this, I suppose, came up a few months ago when our British Prime Minister said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to ban Q-tips. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. That's going to be how we solve the plastic issue for the oceans. Q-tips, yeah, that's cotton buds. That's going to fix everything. And we're going to outlaw single-use plastic, I think by 2030 or 2050. It was some ridiculously far date out into the future. And I came back to Elvis and I said, look, do we have any single-use plastics? And he said, just one, just this courier envelope that we've been trying to get rid of, that our courier partner foists on us. And within 3 days, we'd convinced a courier partner that we didn't need to use that plastic envelope anymore. So within 3 days, we eliminated single-use plastic from the business, right? So sometimes these problems aren't actually that difficult to solve. I think I love talking about other people's grandchildren. Elvis and I don't have any children. We're not trying to create a legacy business for our own family. And we are informed, and every single decision we make for the business is made according to that. If it doesn't make the world better for other people's grandchildren, we don't do it. It's a really, really focused way of making decisions. You come up with some interesting business choices as a result. Transparency is a key thing for my industry. You know, in luxury, everyone's got all these big secrets. There's floors of buildings you're not allowed to go on. Elvis and Kresse is in that building that you saw a few minutes ago, and it's open to anyone at any time. And you can ask me any question about anything we do. I'm here for a couple of hours today, so I really hope that if you do have questions, the weirder the better, happy to answer them. I think also, you know, I have this hashtag, this is luxury, because I think for a long time the luxury industry has tried to tell us what luxury is, and luxury really is snow and ice and clean air and keeping it to 2 degrees and young women being educated and equality of opportunity. You know, so I think we need to kind of reclaim some of these terms and decide what luxury is for ourselves. And my own personal motto is do more, be better. So if I'm ever sort of a little bit tired, struggling to get out of bed, I think, you know what, it's another day. I can roll up my sleeves and get involved in something really exciting. And I think it's really interesting, this idea of love. You know, there's a lot of businesses that think you have your home life and you have your work life. Elvis and I don't have that. We live in that building, we work in that building, we are a couple, you know, we run this business together. And I think it's perfectly okay to wear your heart on your sleeve and to put all your values into your business. Because I don't think we have time for less than that. We don't have time for psychopathic businesses to just keep running on the same path they are towards destruction. You know, it's time for people to be actually quite open about being emotional about what they do with their time and their skills and their talent. And I'm really excited that clearly most of you here want to work in the B Corp space, because these are the kinds of businesses that can really challenge the status quo. Thanks very much.